Now, more than a dozen people from the LGBTIQA plus community have been killed in South Africa since 2019. This rise in killings, believed to be hate crimes, has led to concerns that Parliament is dragging its feet in passing legislation that will deal with the perpetrators. Now, the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech was first introduced in 2016, but is yet to be enacted. If passed, the bill will commit authorities to collect and report details about hate crimes for more effective monitoring. Let's unpack the story for you now. Sally Gandar is the chairperson of the Hate Crimes Working Group. She joins us now via our video link. She's in Cape Town this morning. Sally, it's great to talk to you on such an important issue this morning. I want to just get a sense from you before we begin with our discussion as it links to the bill specifically. Tell us more about the Hate Crimes Working Group.
Sure. Thanks so much, Ayanda. So the Hate Crimes Working Group, we're a multi-sectoral group of NGOs, research organizations, and religious organizations. And it's been around for over a decade now. And these organizations all assist with vulnerable groups. So it ranges from organizations that assist people who are experiencing xenophobia, to organizations that assist LGBTI persons or those that focus on SGBV, religion, race, etc. And all of these organizations in their day-to-day programmatic work assist vulnerable groups and saw that there is a need for hate crimes legislation. So they came together to really try and kind of brainstorm how we could advocate and kind of push forward for this type of legislation and then to do the work to advocate for it.
Yeah. So I mean, just in terms of the lag in actually enacting the bill, what does that mean for the lived reality of people who are in the LGBTIQA plus community?
Sure. So I want to stress, I mean, what we're seeing at the moment in terms of the crimes that are being perpetrated against the LGBTI community, we're seeing a lot of it now, but it's not new. And so one of the things that the Hate Crimes Working Group has seen is that just by way of example, the bill itself was revived by the 6th Parliament. So that's the current Parliament that was elected in the last national elections. And it was revived in October 2019. There's been at least one well-documented and publicized hate crime per month since the revival of the bill. And in terms of the impacts, a hate crime, while there's often one victim who is the kind of immediate victim of the crime, it is also a crime that sends a message. And so it becomes a crime against a whole community. And what that does is it means that members of that group that the victim belonged to, whether it's the LGBTI group or a religious grouping, perhaps it's a race grouping, or it might be a group based on country of origin, members of that group then become more fearful and really just scared to kind of live their lives in dignity in South Africa.
So the LGBTI community is one community that is impacted by the lag in enacting this bill, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. So a hate crime it's a crime based on prejudice, and there are a number of grounds that you can look at. It's nationality, sexual orientation, religion, gender identity or expression, race. It could even be things like ethnicity, disability, gender, or kind of other things like that. So those are some of the grounds.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about one documented hate crime having taken place per month since the bill was revised. That was in October 2019. And it's, as you say, it's one well-documented hate crime. There are so many others.
Well-publicized, so you could Google it.
Yeah, exactly, which means there are so many others that are not publicized, documented, as well as the ones that make the headlines.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that the bill would do is it would be able, or it would enable us to collect better statistics. So we can say, yes, with certainty, there's at least one per month since the bill was revived by the Sixth Parliament. But how many are we missing? And we know, for example, I mean, any South African knows that the GBV statistics in South Africa are probably inaccurate, but at least there's a way of starting to try and see the magnitude of the problem. If we had hate crimes legislation, then one of the things that the legislation would do is it would mean that the government would have to report on how many hate crimes there are. We're all familiar with the yearly crime stats that are reported, and there is some disaggregation of that data. For example, we know exactly how many murders there are. We know exactly how many kind of incidents of rape have been reported, how many have been processed by the criminal justice system. Hate crimes legislation would enable us to have the same sort of data in respect of hate crimes.
Yeah, and for our viewers who are wondering why it is so important that we are able to get those numbers from government, and indeed that government is able to get a more accurate picture of what's unfolding, it's because that is how you craft a response to a single issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, so look, in the same way that the crime would send a message to the group that the victim belongs to, so it's a message crime, legislation would send a message to people that potentially would perpetrate these crimes. So it sends a message to society saying the government does not allow or stand for these crimes being perpetrated in this country.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it shows a commitment from government. It also provides for a framework of detection of these crimes so that you can see, like, is it happening in a specific area? If it is, do we need to put more resources aside in that area, or do we need to put more resources aside for particular types of hate crimes?
What is the lag in getting this bill through the, past just the starting blocks?
I mean, that's the golden question. So, look, one of the lags is that the bill, we all refer to it as the hate crimes bill, but it's actually the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech bill. And initially it started as just hate crimes, but then hate speech was added. And so the Department of Justice and the government's response about the lag is that they are waiting for the Kwelane case, which is it's waiting for judgment in the Constitutional Court, that they're waiting for judgment in that case before they process the bill further. That case is specifically about hate speech, and I'm sure that the viewers and listeners are familiar with the case about it's a homophobic hate speech case. What we argue as the Hate Crimes Working Group is that that's not an excuse or is unjustifiable. What can happen with legislation, and it happens with many pieces of legislation, is that you can separate out chapters. And so you can delay the coming into effect of one chapter, for example, the chapter relating to hate speech, and you can bring into effect the chapters that relate to hate crimes. And that's a simple kind of mechanism that the Parliament can use in order to ensure that this bill is passed swiftly and that the parts relating to hate crimes are implemented as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, would you have preferred for the bill to stay as the hate crimes, the Prevention of Hate Crimes bill, as opposed to the hate speech part being added as well?
So the Hate Crimes Working Group has called, we want legislation that is comprehensive and costed and is specifically regarding hate crimes. I think that one of the views that we have is that the hate speech part does complicate matters, and that in many respects hate speech can be dealt with under other pieces of legislation, for example, the Equality Act.
Yeah.
So, we could have that. It seems that Parliament has taken a different route, and we can respect that route as long as it is done in an efficient way. So don't use this as a delay, is what we are saying.
So as it stands, we don't actually have a deadline or something to look forward to say this is when the bill will be enacted?
No, the only thing that we have from the Department of Justice is we are waiting for the judgment in the Kwelane matter. Now, the court hearing in Kwelane was last year, but then John Kwelane died in December. And so the litigants in that matter had to give more submissions to the Constitutional Court, indicating why there was still a need for a judgment given that the respondent was now deceased. And there is still a need for a judgment. There needs to be a kind of a final say-so on that issue.
You know, for people who are watching this and are wondering, you know, what kind of avenues of justice are available to them and how the delay of enacting this bill would affect those avenues of justice, what would you say to them?
Gosh. So look, number one, a crime is if you look at the hate crimes that are perpetrated, and I'm just going to move around the room very briefly because I see that I'm going to run out of battery. I really apologize for this.
No, go ahead.
But what we do see is that the crimes that are perpetrated are there's a long time period before any resolution takes place, and you just need to look at some of the statistics regarding murders of LGBTI persons, for example. And so there needs to be a commitment from government. The delays in the bill seem to speak to a lack of commitment. One of the other things that we see is that, you know, the criminal justice system itself, I mean, we know that it is under-resourced, and perhaps having a bill like this would provide better resources, and those resources go to more than just the prosecution and the investigation of these crimes, but they go to victims as well.
Absolutely.
And so we do have victim support services that are available at some police stations across the country, but how are those in terms of catering for a specific type of crime that really impacts more than just the individual and the direct family of that individual. So we'd like to see all of that. We'd like to see kind of a firm commitment from government, and that commitment would probably reduce the incidence of hate crimes that we are seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an incredibly important discussion. Sally Gandar, thanks so much for your time and being so quick on your feet, getting a charger to your laptop there. She is the chairperson of the Hate Crimes Working Group. More than a dozen people from the LGBTIQA+ community being killed in South Africa. That's since 2019. Concerns that Parliament is certainly dragging its feet in enacting legislation. That's the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill, first introduced back in 2016. That's a big story that we'll keep our eyes on for you.